Peace, peace, everybody. This is Shaun the Truth, a Baby Town production. We got Danny from Soul Stories Denver, and we also have some amazing panelists who will introduce themselves here very momentarily. But first, I want to guide us through this little meditation deal because I feel like as we engage with some of the dialogue, things can feel all sorts of ways. And we're going through a pandemic, and we got kids that are getting ready to return to school, or maybe they're not. There's a lot of different issues that we're fighting right now. So before we jump into everything, I just want to center us, get us grounded, and prepare for a pretty dope discussion. So if you will, please sit your back straight against whatever platform, whatever chair, whatever wall you got. Put your feet firmly on the ground so we can connect and center ourselves. And if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes. If you don't feel comfortable, that's fine, no judgment. And let us just pay attention to our breath. How we feeling? How was the day? Where's the stress at? Is it in the body? Is it in the mind? And we are going to take a deep breath through the nose. Hold that breath in your stomach. And breathe out through the mouth. Breathe in through the nose a little deeper. Hold it in the chest. And breathe out through the mouth. How's your heart feeling? Should be beating. Should let you know you're alive in this moment. Now we're going to do one last deep breath, as deep as you can get on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in through the nose. Stop. Hold it in your neck. And release through the mouth. And when you're ready to return to the space, open your eyes. I hope that was refreshing to everybody, because I just feel that we got so much going on, whether it's individually, personally, politically, spiritually, mentally. We got a lot of different things. That's why Baby Town Production has partnered with Soul Stories Denver, because we just want to bring different dialogues to the people, and we want shared perspectives. We want questions from allies, and we want questions to be answered from experts. In this case, we know Brother Hassan, Brother Don, and Sister Lindsay. They are all experts in what they do, and we invite them to this space humbly. And with that being said, if we could have Brother Don introduce yourself and what is the work that you got going on?
Hello, everybody. Here streaming from the great state of Mississippi. My name is Don Teasyman Turner. Also Don Teasyman on all of our podcast branding and Rebel Media Group entertainment platforms. I started recently Rebel Media Group, which is a platform for Black creatives to network together with Black entrepreneurs, as well as to highlight activism work that different Black community organizers are doing. For example, I recently started the Mississippi chapter of the National Refuse to Return movement. What Refuse to Return demands, or what it represents or advocates for, is for campuses to remain closed unless they're in a county that's gone 14 consecutive days with no new cases of COVID. This is a simple demand designed to keep students and teachers and paraprofessionals safe. You have many schools across this nation, specifically, especially within the state of Mississippi, who are trying to go back to traditional school environments, brick and mortar buildings, regular pre-COVID activity. And there's no way to do that without killing children, without killing women, without killing parents and professionals and community members. So we're just advocating that parents and professionals and community members refuse to return back to campuses unless they're going back in a condition that's safe, and organizing support and collective action around that. So that's most of what I've been doing for the recent past.
Sure. Thank you, Brother Don. Uh, Sister Lindsay, can you talk to us a little bit about who you are and the work that you're activated and interrupting, if you will?
Yes, my name is Lindsay Minter. I live in the great state of Colorado in the city of Aurora, which is a suburb of like the Mile High municipality. For those of you who don't live here, we're really literally just a hop, skip, and a jump from Denver, 20 minutes. Pretty much we all take care of each other. And I've been in the community interrupting since, you know, way back when in Denver when they were killing folks, like Paul Castaway and Brian Ronquillo. That's when I got my organizing start. My significant other's brother, Sherrod Kendall, was shot and survived. So we did rallies and stuff around getting him pillows and blankets because they were mistreating him in jail, making sure that they knew that we were watching. And then I was connected to awesome streamers and stuff like that. And we took the movement back to Aurora, where I actually live. And um, a few years back, Nacelis Carter, the media calls him Nacelis Vincent because they use the alias. But he was murdered by the same cop that arrested the Aurora police shooter, James Holmes, alive. Um, and we started organizing around, getting policy passed then. It was supposed to be passed then, along with the family getting some kind of, apology as well as, basically justice in the sense of what it can stand for. It never brings your loved one back. Then we circle around missing women in Colorado, Ashea Stein. Ashea, she went missing 4 years ago on July 14th. The day just passed, and we organized around hitting Colfax, hitting the pimp motels, just trying to look for her and find her, because the idea is that she's being trafficked, and if our community doesn't care about us, who will? Fast forward to Elijah, and then Elijah McClain is touched me differently because day one, in August, when we found out about it, I was actually working on Omar Montgomery's campaign to become mayor of Aurora. We lost by 129 votes. Um, but in that, I learned how to actually encompass and surround a family with support and help through his mentorship of me. We held rallies. Sometimes it would only be 20, 30 people coming out. We called out to people like, hey, this kid was murdered. Um, they killed him for 15 whole minutes. He told them, I love you. You're beautiful. I'm just different. You know, um, I don't do guns. I don't even fight. I wouldn't kill a fly. And just hearing how it happened and watching that video and listening, because the cops dismantled their cameras when they went hands on with him, so all we got to do was listen to him get killed and murdered. It just moved me different. So we sat in city council meetings. um, we worked to get laws passed, to make suggestions and stuff for SB 217, bills around it. And then when George Floyd hit, Elijah became national because we weren't going to let go of saying Elijah's name as well as George Floyd and as well as Breonna Taylor. So there's even people riding out tonight as we speak to go be present for a protest for Breonna Taylor from our community in Colorado, to show that we support, and this fight isn't different. This fight is life and death. Diversity of tactics. I also sit on the community police um, task force because we're trying to create an oversight committee from the inside. Um, but then also this week I was conflicted because, there's a class action lawsuit that was filed today called Mentor et al. Versus Aurora. I'm the lead plaintiff in that. And that was filed today because when we were at the violin vigil, they they took away our rights. They pepper sprayed, they trampled, they pushed, all while these violinists were trying to, pay tribute to Elijah. So you have to work all angles. You have to be in the streets. I'm in the streets. You have to be in the back rooms helping get things developed and built. I'm trying to do that. I'm also trying to put pressure on so our rights aren't getting taken under this administration.
I feel that wholeheartedly, Lindsay, and I really appreciate your immediate efforts and just organizing on I would say a successive level or a sequential level. That's the word. Um, because it's just the thing that I always get wrapped up on is if we protest, that's a protest, but then the actions that come after the protest itself are very meaningful and they're the only ways to sustain.
Yeah,
So I
that's
just
hard work. And I also coach kids. I'm a track coach. I forgot that. My kids, that's my lifeblood. So after I do all of this, I get down with my kids. We get on that track. We let it all go, and they're amazing. And they're my black boy joys and my girls. I just love them to death. So or love them to life.
There you go.
we're gonna have to tie that in between you and Don because I feel like young people, they definitely influence a lot of the movement in multiple ways, whether that's joy or just keeping us refreshed in our own efforts. So we're definitely going to return to that. And last but not least, we got the OG in the community, maybe the triple OG, brother Hassan. What's up, man? What you doing? Oh, you're on mute.
Right? Are we good? Are we good? All right. Yeah. First of all, Shaun, thank you for the meditation, the centering. I got to be honest though, Lindsay's narrative right now, just a minute ago about the murder of Elijah McClain, kind of took all of that piece that I got from you at the beginning, and so I'm sorry about that. I want to just start by saying this is a first for me. Believe it or not, this is my first live podcast. So I appreciate the opportunity and to be drawn into this circle. I'm Hassan A. Latif. I'm the executive director and founder of Second Chance Center here in Colorado, Aurora, Colorado. We've been in existence for 8.5 years now. The first of which was a year spent in what I call my mobile unit. It was just me and my car, and begging my way into penitentiaries and halfway houses. I thought that the work of reentry and transitioning back to community needed some adjustments, and I felt very strongly that it was people most impacted by the criminal justice system and incarceration in particular that needed to take the lead in this particular work. And so that was 8.5 years ago. Today we're a staff of 26. So we've been blessed with considerable growth. Half of my staff are formerly incarcerated people. So we have probably cumulatively about 160 years of incarceration time on staff, which it only means two things. One, like nobody can come in Second Chance Center and tell us nothing about doing time. We know all about that. But more importantly, it gives us a leg up on the trust that's required when you're asking people sometimes to delve into very dark and uncomfortable spaces and working through that and getting past and beyond that where it's possible. So we take advantage of that kind of common thread with our folks to do what we do. I think it probably couldn't be argued that we're the preeminent agency doing this work in Colorado. We feel as though we're the blueprint for how this thing gets done. We're very much involved in the legislative end of things because there was literally no space in this arena for Black men and formerly incarcerated men in particular to do this kind of work. And so we carved that space out with the help of some legislation. We've been a part of the passing of 12 pieces of legislation into law here in Colorado in the last 6 years. Last year in particular, 9 pieces of criminal justice reform legislation were signed by our new governor, Governor Polis. And he actually came to our house to do it. We thought that was pretty significant, that at that level of government, they were recognizing community in that way. So we're still doing our thing. That's what we do. Currently, we're trying to deal with getting decarceration, in effect, trying to get people released as a result of COVID. People with some issues, elderly folks residing in these cages, and that's been a battle in itself. But we've also been trying to be prepared for them when they come out, and so securing housing has been an issue for us. We've been taking master leases on any property that we can get in the Denver metropolitan area, Aurora in particular. It's been a blessing that folks have actually been open to trusting us with their property in this way. And we also have delved into housing development of our own. We built a 50-unit permanent supportive housing development in Aurora that we opened up on the 24th of February. We got our temporary certificate of occupancy at 10 o'clock. We started leasing up at 10:30. We had leased the entire building in 60 hours. So we're pretty proud of that. We think that that it's an example of how this kind of work can be done, how these kind of developments can be done by community organizations. And we feel like if we can pull it off, that with the baggage that we brought to the process, that other entities could probably do the same if they were committed to the effort that's going to be required to bring it online. So I would encourage anyone who might be interested in this to visit our website. It's scccolorado.org. You can go there and connect with us, anyone needing reentry or transition services in the Denver metropolitan area in particular. But across the country, we of course, we're not traveling now, but we have been blessed with opportunities to travel to many places in the country and kind of help budding entities, budding organizations kind of avoid some of the pitfalls that many nonprofits are challenged by. We've been able to avoid a lot of those traps. And part of it is because when we started, when I parked the car and moved into our first facility, the first 2 people I brought on was a young man named Shaun Taylor, who caught a life sentence at age 17 here in Colorado and did 22 years before he had his sentence commuted by a previous governor, Ritter. And the second person was a brother named Adam Abdullah, who had just finished 33 years and 3 months in the Fed system. So cumulatively with the 18 that I did here in Colorado myself, we had 75 years of incarceration time to start out. Quite naturally, people were wondering, what are these guys up to? And so we've always operated under a really big microscope. We've also operated as though we don't get to say my bad. And our approach to the work like that, it's resulted in a couple of things. The kind of close scrutiny we've been under, people have not only seen the work that we do, but how we go about it. And where it might have been intended to be an intimidation tactic to start, it really is just highlighted what our capabilities are. And so it's all been a blessing as it turns out. So we're here still doing it. I just like to first say, when I saw George Floyd get murdered, I had people hit me up, requests for interviews from local news sources and written and media sources. And I declined all of those offers. Not just because I'm typically not a photo op guy, but I really was numb to the sense that if I didn't have anything encouraging or supportive to say, that I didn't feel comfortable in that space. And the I felt like that as a result of being born the year Emmett Till was murdered by the police and the sheriff's clan friends. And I've been watching Black men in particular, and more recently Black women being murdered by the police every year of my Black ass life. And I was just numb about it. But the preceding weeks of watching my young brothers and sisters hit them bricks and raise those voices. I mean, I saw a mural to George Floyd in a bombed out city in Syria. You know, so when you talk about being re-energized, I'm thankful and grateful to all of those folks that are out there, every day in different cities across this country doing this work. It's re-energized an older brother, and I very much appreciate them helping me find my flow again. So thank all of y'all.
Is it okay if I hop in right here?
Don, when you guys do that, that makes me feel great, because if y'all can do the discussion, then I don't have to do shit.
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, first, brother Hassan, I want to say I got to get you over these guys in Mississippi, the Mississippi Prison Reform movement or coalition. They're doing a lot of really good or really important work down here, as far as not just mass incarceration and how it impacts the state of Mississippi, but the prison conditions here as well. We're just coming off of one of the biggest prison riots probably in the nation of the country, but they had a sustained protest because of Parchment, correct? Yeah, man, I'm with you. Anything that I can help. Reentry is something that's close to my heart as well. I have several members of my family, brothers, uncles, etc., who have served their time and then had difficulty coming back into a society who they had already paid a debt to, still treating them as if they owed it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's something that anybody should have to deal with. So yeah, definitely anything that I can do to help amplify Signal Boost you, I'd be happy to do that. And I definitely want to get you connected with these brothers out here too.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, you good, sister. But to another point that you mentioned as well about there being a sense of re-energizing. I was speaking with Danny earlier before we started the broadcast, and saying something similar. Here in Mississippi, you can feel it in the air. There is a literal push and demand and resolve and conviction for change and for progress, that I don't think has been here in generations. And I think it's to the point that you said, you were born the year that Emmett Till was lynched here in Mississippi. My mom, I was just talking about this at the rally in Indianola earlier. My mom was born 2 years after Brown versus Board was passed, but she still went to segregated schools her whole life, all the way up until she graduated, because there was no enforcement of it here until the federal government had to step in, and we're still fighting those same structures. She didn't graduate because she staged anti-war protest her senior year. So to that point, I think it does fall to to the cats my age and Gen Z, you know what I'm saying, to pick up the call. And I think a lot of that is happening. So I appreciate you and the old heads that carried the banner this far. And I just want you to know for sure we picking it up for you and keeping it running.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. And brother Don, know that I'm up for road trips as soon as this COVID thing, let us go. I'll be more than happy to come down there and visit with you all and get some of that energy.
Her, for sure. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that when you guys talk about incarceration, and I think about my friends and my girlfriends who have, partners inside, um, my friends that, have sons and daughters, and we're paying that J pay, and we're paying for that phone, and they're taxing us, and how this prison industrial complex affects probably everybody in some way or some form of fashion. And while we're mothering you guys in jail, somehow, it takes, someone like Hassan to come and get them right when they're coming out. Um, Hassan has been, me and him have a personal connection. He tried to help one of my loved ones, and my loved one, he kind of fell back, but he's doing well now, and he's out in society and transitions home very well. But those journeys are rough, so I appreciate what you guys do in that area, because it is so important. We can't drop the ball and not love them on the outside as much as folks so called love you on the inside.
So real quick, Lindsay, I wanna highlight what you and really what all of you have mentioned to a degree, especially when I think about like brown versus or feel, and I've heard this, but uh, integration of black and white and brown and all the colors, races, whatever's like that was the best and the worst thing that could happen to us. That's something that's been brought up numerous times to me, and also when I work with some of the young men over in Aurora and in throughout the Denver metro area, it seems like there's a lost sense of self. It's hard to motivate my young men, and it seems as if we lack an understanding of how powerful we are even at a young age, and half of that has to do with the lack of a village, but then there's also a lack of support systems, whether it's in the household or the schools. So I just want to transition a little bit from what you guys are saying and try to tie it into this specific question. But how do you guys feel that schools play a role in black bodies being undervalued?
Sean, I just have a technical question because I'm getting texts and people aren't knowing how to actually get on to watch us. How do they do that from the link?
Danny, did you want to tackle that one?
Yeah. Um, so it's right now being live streamed from the Soul Stories Facebook page.
Okay.
And then Lindsay, I think you shared the link on your page. The link is just, you click share and then you click copy link and you can send that anywhere really.
Okay.
But I was having trouble with it too, even getting it on Babytown and Shaun on the Truth. So I think it's been a little finicky.
Okay, so just hit the link. And I'm sorry to interrupt the question. Just folks want to hear what we're talking about. Okay, thank you.
And feel free to let me know any technical questions. Also, Hassan, I mute you in between talking because you're echoing when other people are talking, just so you know.
Shaun, you want to re-ask your question since I so rudely interrupted you? I'm
You,
sorry.
you didn't rudely interrupt. I was trying to figure out a way to comment on the page, the Second Chance Center link. So my apologies for that random delay. And my baby's crying in the background. You know how it goes. That young life. But I just wanted to tie and build off of what you guys were talking about as it related to black bodies being undervalued, whether it's the Emmett Tills of the world, it's the George Floyds of the world. I feel like there's a very systematic approach to how we are undervalued as black bodies. So I wanted you guys' thoughts, and anybody could speak towards this. But how do you feel schools play a role in black bodies being undervalued?
Can I jump in? Can you hear me, Shaun? First of all, I don't want to lose your question. I wanted to comment, and I was muted, to Lindsay, her statement. I had a black queen, Imani, my wife, that walked those 18 years down with me. And when you talk about loving us up inside, she was really the reason I survived that ordeal. So I just want to second that emotion and to shout my partner out. When the first thing that pops to mind when you talk about how schools impact the devaluing of black bodies and our children in particular, the first thing that pops to my mind is the policing of schools. And this is something here in Colorado that we're gonna put it into. We're gonna put it into school resource officers, or whatever they want to call it, and where issues that should be dealt with by counselors or mental health professionals instead of being directed towards the criminal justice system. We're going to stop that in Colorado because for me, I think that's where a big portion of the devaluing starts. You know, if you look in Colorado, there's only 18 schools that have police officers stationed, and those 18 schools happen to be in communities of color. So it's pretty obvious what the intent is, regardless of how it's packaged. And so for me, that's a big part of it. And we're going to do our best to put it into it. Now, I was one of those who was around and alive in New York, which is my home, where I came from, no longer my home, but where I came from, where I was raised. And I was there when they started to integrate schools. And when you say it was the best and the worst, I went from an environment where I had predominantly Black teachers, Black female teachers mostly, who really emphasized the importance of us being twice as good to get half as far. And I lost that when they bussed me an hour and a half from my community to another, where we were systematically tortured, basically, until we put an end to it. And so, yeah, I remember those days. I experienced those days. Let me just tell you really quickly. I was a kid in New York who had some very different tastes. And when I was transferred to the first predominantly white school that I attended, I was late, of course, getting into a new school. And when I came into the class, it was an English class. And the only seat available, of course, was in the back of the room. And I was the only Black person in the class. And they were reading Shakespeare. And I waited patiently for a couple of minutes, so there was a pause in the narrative. And I raised my hand, and the teacher asked me what I wanted. I said I didn't have a book. And she said to me, "That's okay. You wouldn't understand it anyway." And when she said that, these other kids, the white kids, started like giggling and stuff. And you can imagine the kind of feelings that went through me. So I stood up, and I think everyone thought that I was getting ready to leave, you know, but instead I said, "Is this a dagger which I see before me, handled toward my hand? Come, let me clutch thee. I have thee not, yet I see thee still. Art thou vision sensible to feeling as to sight, or art thou but a dagger of the mind, proceeding from a heat-oppressed brain?" And I looked around, and all the mouths were dropped open, and she was like, let me find you a book. And I said, "No, that's all right. I don't need it." What she didn't know is that that was something that I enjoyed. I studied. You know, that was for me, that was entertainment for me. Those kinds of stories of Shakespeare about betrayal and murder and all that kind of stuff. I was into all of that. And to be put on the spot like that, you know, I was able to deal with it. But I know that many young Black children who are put in settings like that are not equipped to respond to those kind of overt racist attempts to devalue you. And so I think about that, and I know that it's something that, yeah, we can do something about it at home. But you said it, Shaun. It takes a village for us to put this thing back together, and so that's my feeling about it.
Go ahead.
Nah, go ahead, sister. You got it.
I think in dealing with, Black kids and Black bodies and our Black youth, one of the very biggest problems that contribute to the school to prison pipeline is the just presence of SROs in our classrooms, in our schools. When Bobby doesn't want to give you the pencil back, that is not a reason to call the police on Bobby. That's classroom management. And I think that when people aren't teaching or don't know how to engage diverse populations of students and don't know how to meet kids where they're at, it becomes a problem. Because just because a kid even rolls their eyes at you or calls you the B word is not the reason you call the police. But in our schools, and especially Aurora Public Schools, I'm just going to go ahead and call them out. They have SROs arresting kids at school for things that happen outside of school. That should never happen because school is supposed to be a sanctuary. But yet they have these contracts and these policies in individual schools where they're running backgrounds when you're late, but teachers are locking you out when you're 1 minute late. So if you're catching the bus to school, you already have a problem because buses run according to traffic. If you don't have vehicles or your parents work and you're walking, it snows in Colorado, cold days, all of that. you're going to be a problem. And they're targeting our kids specifically in specific groups. And I know an individual who was a dean at one of our high schools here in Aurora, and his work, he ended up getting kicked out of the school because he fought the system tooth and nail. Like, he worked with a group of kids, and those were the kids that were being targeted. Um, and it was a daily battle for him. But when I find out that the Aurora police officer is arresting kids and that there's blood left on the sidewalk from that assault, and the other kids are walking past it just as they go, and they see that blood and they're having to walk around their friend's blood because the Aurora police just slammed them already. I think about that is a direct link. It's not even like two moves out. You're arresting kids in school and taking them straight to jail. And that's a problem. And we have to get rid of that because things that happen in school should be handled on the school level. They're behavior management problems, they're discipline. You can call the cops in, hopefully never, but if you need them, they're down the street. Why can't you call them in when you need them? I know the argument is that SROs will prevent school shootings and so on and so forth, and that never happens. It never freaking happens. We have, the case in Florida where the SRO, kind of punked out, you know, and hid. And the teacher, the video of the teacher disarming the kid and hugging the kid into giving his rifle. That there's two different types of loves. Teachers have hopefully that heart for kids, where these SROs need to be trained better and they need to work to push these kids' futures forward. And if you want police that look like community, you need to recruit them in the high schools that they're in. So you need to be that example. And the SROs in our schools right now are not the example. They're not making young black and brown kids want to become police. They're making them hate police. And that's not bridging gaps. That's not doing what, society is supposedly seeking. When we say defund police departments or whatever, that means fund programs that may help bridge that, but take the SROs out and then do an after school program, an explorers program, and teach them forensics or, teach them things that they can get interested in the future. You can't have somebody beating your brains on the sidewalk, wanding you when you come to school, only select kids, but wanding you and patting you down every day when you come into school and then turn around and want to be that guy. It doesn't happen. And then these kids are getting these juvenile records and some of them can never escape the system.
Um, yeah, I think, excuse me, I think you both hit the nail on the head with the school resource officers. When you're placing, we talk about a school to prison pipeline. I mean, that's a cutout to the pipeline. That's an expressway. It's directly there. Don't pass go. You are involving law enforcement for educational matters, and that's never a situation where it's going to be okay, especially when we have to admit there are also these caring teachers who will weaponize these school resource officers because they don't want to deal with this child. And there's layers to that. That teacher could be having a bad day. That teacher likely is culturally unaware and not culturally sensitive enough to recognize the differences between AAVE and standard American English and the way that these interactions are going to change. And then on top of that, when we're talking specifically about,
did you just say AAVE?
I did, yes.
Can you explain that? We were just talking about that at my job today and throughout this week. Can you explain AAVE just for the audience?
Yeah, sure, no problem, no problem. All right, so AAVE is African American Vernacular English, more commonly or colloquially referred to as Ebonics. So this is essentially what you see or what you mean when people are talking Black, right? In a white-centered and a white-dominated society, that's looked down upon or seen as inferior, but it's really just another dialect of English. It's no more incorrect than standard American English is incorrect and compared to British English. These are all just different ways of speaking English, but because it came from us, is usually deemed wrong. You get teachers correcting students, even though they understand, even though they're speaking essentially the same language in different dialects, and it causes a sense of inferiority. Black children are forced to be polydialectal and bilingual without any ESL services. Um, and it's an invisible barrier that we have to not only overcome, but have targeted against us. And it's not fair. So you have that. And then on top of that, you have these school resource officers who are targeting and terrorizing Black youth for regular behavior problems, some of which are often signs of being gifted. But those things get criminalized in Black behavior and Black children. Well, little Johnny's not sitting down in class because he's bored. He gets tested. He gets some extra services. He might get another class. But when Jerome's doing it, he get kicked out because he's a distraction. You have things like this that contribute to this undervaluing. Then your literature, the canon of required reading in schools is white. It is white, it is white, it is white, it is white, it is male, it is Christian, it is straight. And that is all that it is. And any viewpoints, any perspectives, any centering of narratives outside of that is extra. It's extracurricular. You have to go and seek it. And no child is going to want to do that after they've been force-fed media that they can't relate to. But you make this excuse that if white children read a story about a Black protagonist, they won't relate. But this is what you're putting all these other kids through. What makes this different? What makes it less accessible? The story is universal. The story is the story, but you create, by not speaking, a message that these stories are for these people. You are relegated to these other roles, and that is again a decrease of that value. So you see it happening in multiple levels, on multiple fronts at all times, and it just contributes to the myopic sense of just hopelessness that's one of the more intangible effects of systemic racism. So yeah, we gotta be more diligent about, being vocal and being active about removing these school resource officers, these terrorists from our campuses, advocating for our children as well, for mental health services and mental wellness screenings, as opposed to behavioral issues and just being kicked out of school every other day. Excuse me, and then advocate for diversifying the canon. We have to ensure that our children are being given media that looks and represents them. And that's all I got to say about that.
I just want to bring y'all back to a moment. I don't mean to jump and talk too much, but
Mhm.
you remember Spring Valley High School and the little girl was slammed by the officer and just taken and body slammed.
Mm-hmm.
We even tried to support from her. We did this thing called Spring Valley Sonnets, and all these Black men sent poems and letters, to that young lady. And every time I hear about that, I get that envisioned in my heart, and it invigorates me to work with my students and to listen to them and to hear them, because when they're out there at practice, they're letting it all out. They're putting it on the
Yeah.
track. It's a form of therapy, and the culture doesn't really believe in therapy, but it works.
Oh
And
yeah.
so if they're out there and that's the only therapy they got, they work it out. So that's very important. But I bring up that young lady to bring up the fact that Black females are being pushed out at even a higher rate than African American men. There's a documentary or a movie called The Push Out. And I just recently watched it. I was invited to watch it online. I didn't even know what I was watching, and the statistics in there were just incredible. So if you guys get a chance, watch that, because it talks about the woman side of it. We're combating the stuff for our males, but just like with say their name, and Breonna Taylor, amplifying when a woman gets hurt, or killed or murdered. Sandra Bland, there's all kinds of women when you go to the hashtag say her name, that those voices, Ayanna Stanley Jones, 7 years old, sleeping on her grandmother's couch. This is breaking us, and these are the kids that we're fighting for in the school, and then we're still turning around and fighting for their lives at home, walking home. Rakia Boyd standing on the corner, just with her cell phone, and not even being the one being shot at for no reason, because that was even unjust, but just being an innocent bystander. Enough is enough. These females that get shot in the cars while they're driving and they shoot at moving vehicles. Jessie Hernandez is a brown Latina person that was victimized here, and they shot into a moving car with all kinds of other passengers in it. Um, we just have to protect all of our voices, and just stipulate that all of our kids are getting pushed out. They're building beds in those prisons for all of our kids at a faster rate than we can employ them. And so we just have to surround our youth and the youth violence, and I'll let somebody else speak to that. But you know we have to do it at all avenues. The movement, it doesn't go away, like Shaun said about when the cameras are on, or maybe Hassan said that when the cameras go away, there's more work to do. And so there's opportunities in those communities, and you know who those leaders are. Folks need to reach out to you in Mississippi. Folks need to reach out to Hassan and go volunteer. Donate clothes, business clothes, and interview type clothing to over at his resource center. We have to support in every way we know how to everything, because it's all one collective fight.
Thanks for highlighting that and highlighting just all the different little ways people can support. And when you all were talking about just the racism present in schools and policing Black bodies, and then talking about mental health, I work in mental health. I work at a place for kids who've been through trauma and abuse. And I think we're having our own reckoning with our white supremacist systems that exist. I mean, our leadership's completely white. And we have a lot of white people working at the top. So I guess what I'm curious about is how can mental health be a support, as you guys were talking, and what barriers are there within mental health itself to be supporting Black and brown bodies? And that's for everybody.
Yeah, I'll hop in on this one first. I think as far as barriers, accessibility and cost seem to be the biggest, at least in conversations that I've come across. But as far as addressing the racial aspect of it as well, we have to have more Black therapists and Black mental health professionals be centered. It's an unnecessary or unfair navigation to have to worry about coming into therapy and trying to determine if my therapist may also be racist, if my therapist is going to understand or question these microaggressions I'm trying to verbalize, and if not reassure me, at least not contradict me directly, at least not challenge me on something that's already causing me grief because of the challenge, and things of that nature. I think it's important that we highlight mental health services that are centered around Black people in Mississippi. There's a girl here, Nicole Lewis, who has Legacy Wellness Services. She's a Black mental health professional. During COVID, she started offering free, I think, 45-minute sessions to Black Mississippians. And it's something that's helped a lot of people. She's able to continue to do that because of donations that she's gotten from people who can't afford, and so on and so forth. So I think it takes funding and amplifying and supporting services like that, and then connecting that to the Black people of the Black community and in the neighborhood. And then it's also a matter too of you have to meet people where they are. There's no reason a counselor can't sit up in the barbershop every week, you know what I'm saying, and hear what's going on here. Here's my card, brother, you know what I'm saying, make an appointment whenever. Or in the salon, you know what I'm saying, dang sister, I hear what you're going through, it's tough. Here's my card, come holler at me. Or even just while you wait, just come sit here by me. You have to re-examine the model of how the practice is performed to begin with, because it was never designed for anybody but rich white people. And you can't, if you're starting from there, you're never gonna really be able to fit it around you.
Brother Don, I second everything you just finished saying. But I also believe that culturally, you know, Black folks has to take some of that on themselves, because we still have an aversion to the idea of therapy and mental health in particular. I mean, we still talking about Aunt Sadie having bad nerves. No, she don't have bad nerves. She's bipolar. You know,
That anxiety.
so, yes, you know. So I know with our population, we're working with men and women now who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, who have never addressed the kind of trauma that they experienced as children. We're not looking for excuses for why people display the kind of behaviors or make the kind of decisions that wind them up in prison, but we're trying to help our folks figure out what it's all about. You know, we have a real simple formula, and I think it's a mental health formula that we work with at Second Chance Center, and it's called thoughts plus feelings equals behavior. So our belief is that if you still think the same way and feel the same way about most things, that the likelihood is that you're going to behave in a similar fashion going forward. So any of our folks that have experienced incarceration, and that's something you want to avoid, then we believe those first two things have to be examined. How did you get to thinking like you do? Examine the feelings you have about the world, your place in it, all that kind of stuff. Because what I've found personally, and what I've found in this work, is that anyone who finds themselves in one of these dark spaces, in one of these cages, whether it's for the first time or repeated kind of visitation to these settings, there comes a time when everybody is asking themselves the same question, and excuse my language, folks who might be offended: what the fuck is wrong with me? Why do I keep doing these things? Why do I keep hurting myself? Why do I keep destroying my loved ones? And I mean, and there's an answer for that. There's an answer for many folks that they're not really acknowledging. And that's where dealing with mental health issues is most critical, because, you know, I don't know of anyone who wakes up and goes through their life thinking, hey, I want to spend a good portion of my adulthood in the penitentiary. You know, I want to spend a lot of my time addicted to substances. You know, I want to be, you know, resolving all of my conflicts with extreme violence. I mean, this is what I want for myself. No, it's not. It's the kind of behavior that we're driven to, and I think, you know, when it comes to Black folks, we need to be acknowledging that. You know, there was years ago when Color Purple first was published, even before the movie. And that's Sister Alice Walker. She took a lot of flack from Black folks about the story she was telling. But she was telling the story we all knew. We just weren't talking about it. You know, you're talking about, you know, sexual predation in families. You know, people want to think that that's the other folks that are doing that. But it's not, and this never has been. And we got to be honest with ourselves about the damage we're doing to our own children. We got to be honest with ourselves about our need for assistance when it comes to areas where we're not able to grasp control of certain elements of our lives. We have to be willing to ask for help and then accept that wherever it's coming from and however it's processed. And so I think it's a lot of our own responsibility. And that's not to say that we're not being victimized on a regular basis. When people start talking about PTSD and the P standing for post, I'm checking them, because it's persistent. It's persistent and it's ongoing, and we need to acknowledge that and try to do whatever we can to put the brakes on some of it. So I'm a person personally. I would never consider therapy. You know, I had a mental health evaluation in 1989 when I had a slew of cases pending in court and was looking for an out. And so I wasn't one that was going to smear feces on myself or pick up cigarette butts off the ground and smoke them. So what I did was stop talking to my attorneys, which was an alarm for everybody. Something's wrong with this guy. And as a result, I went through this process, and the evaluation came back with a couple of things. And if you don't mind my sharing, it said that I had antisocial personality disorder, which is kind of a really easy one. That I had homicidal predisposition, paranoid features, they told me as well, and homicidal predisposition. So she asked me what I thought about that. Dr. Fukutaki was her name. And I said, well, let me just see if I'm understanding you. When you say antisocial, do I feel like I don't fit? You know, like a round peg in a square hole, that kind of thing. She said, oh, yeah, pretty much. And I said, paranoid features, like everybody's out to get me, like the police, the district attorney. Yeah, she said, kind of. And I said, homicidal predispositions, like I'll go there before I let somebody hurt me or mine. And she said, yeah, that's pretty much it. I said, well, doesn't sound good, but yeah, that's who I am. Well, it actually took me about 15 additional years before I realized that really wasn't who I was. It was who I became in order to deal with a number of things in my life. And I was open at the time that I realized that this wasn't who I was. I had gotten to the place where I was open to talking to folks and putting myself in a therapeutic setting where I could work on some things. And that's kind of what we try to do with our population now, without them having to spend 18 years in the penitentiary or spend a lot of money to try to find a therapist who actually can listen and understand and see them while they're going through this process. So yeah, we got to own some of that ourselves.
All right, and can I just hop back in real quick?
Please.
No, I 100% agree that there's a level of accountability that we have to take on. Especially again, if it ain't been clear yet, I'm from Mississippi. That's the buckle of the Bible Belt. Like I am from pray it away country. Like I get it. But I also would I have to challenge that or add to that at least. It's difficult to ask for help you don't know you need. When we're talking about Black people specifically, we're talking about generations and generations of repressed trauma and unrecognized trauma and undiagnosed trauma and illness. It's hard to know you need help when all you know is, oh, you just like your mama. Oh, you just like your daddy. You don't know that your mama was majorly depressed, that your daddy, you know what I'm saying, was manic, that your uncle all over the place because he really ADHD. It's hard to seek services or seek help for things that you cannot recognize you need help. And that's not to say that, you know what I'm saying, that removes responsibility or removes accountability. Because when you know better, you can do better. And it's always our job to try to know better.
No, brother, that's not a challenge. That's just a clarification. That what you're talking about is how deep this thing runs, you know. And I was an example of exactly what you're talking about. I could look out of my cell door window at everyone in the pod, and I could tell you what was wrong with every one of those individuals. When I looked in the mirror, I'm all right, you know.
Right.
And think about the call out when somebody's trying to say, hey, you know what, I'm noticing some things are a little bit off. You know how that's not received well in our society. When you tell your kids and your nieces and your nephews, you don't have to hug Uncle so and so because he needs to respect your boundaries. You know, as little kids, they say, okay, I'm learning boundaries, I'm learning consent. But what that's signaling to the adults in the room is, oh, so and so is a pedophile. They shouldn't be there in the first place. Um, you know, telling people that they need mental health issue, help is one of the hardest things that I have ever had to do during this, course of working with people. Like, you are getting severely depressed, and sometimes that might mean that you might need some medicine. And Black folks are absolutely against medicine. Well, some Black folks. My personal journey, like I didn't want them to put me on medication for my PTSD. I wanted to do it. I wanted to talk to my spiritual, therapist through church and pray it away, like you were talking about. I wanted guidance. I wanted talk therapy. I wanted all of these other things. And then I just realized, hey, you know what? I need some chemical help too. And people are like, oh, don't put that poison in your body. But God made these doctors that made these drugs and these pharmaceuticals. And I know that we don't need to put every pharmaceutical in our body, but sometimes we need to balance out the chemical in our brain and the way our brain waves are firing and the way we perceive pain sometimes, because there's a lot of pain with going through life being an African American person or a person of color. There's a lot of trauma, and our body actually holds pain when stuff happens to us. So if you get thrown into a wall, on a specific date, and then on that date next year, you're feeling all kinds of achy, that's a real thing. So you have to have some things that disrupt those things. You have to have talk. You have to be able to talk to someone who doesn't know all your aunties and your uncles, and then they're having a conversation like, "Oh, I saw Lindsay today. Oh, where'd you see Lindsay at? Oh, at work. Oh, she was, you saw her like that. Oh, so Lindsay, what's going on with you? So and so saw you." We have to remove that by making sure that there's enough people available. And I tried to go through Aurora Mental Health, and that's a disaster because with my insurance, it cost me $40 per visit, and they wanted to see me once a week. So then that adds to, 40 times 4. That's money. You know what I'm saying? And that's something that you don't ever budget for. Who budgets for mental health and all of those services? And yes, the talk groups are there and they're supportive and all of that, but that one-on-one direct care with somebody at first, and then probably with a person of color, but you have to get it in where you are. And I really agree with going to the barber shops and the nail salons and all of those things, so you can see some of these abusive relationships that are happening between men and women. This woman comes in with a black eye to get her nails done because so and so is trying to repair for the fact that he just beat your ass last night, but now he wants you to look pretty with your nails done, to interrupting these cycles of violence that are killing our females and our males and our transgender women, and people. We have to really really just encompass all of this stuff all together, because it makes a difference and it's really needed.
Can I just add? I don't want to get too much in the weeds on this, but when we start talking about traumatic brain injuries, I know when people hear that phrase, they think perhaps they visualize maybe a motorcycle accident and somebody didn't have a helmet, but it really isn't. In traumatic brain injury, can result in a number of different ways, and the result of it at an early age, it actually changes the development of the brain. When you're talking about the need of certain chemicals to help with how things are wired, this is the fact. That the brain is actually altered in its development by not just physical abuse, but sometimes secondary abuse from being around to visualize violence or to hear these kinds of things. And you're right, a lot of folks aren't aware of it. And Brother Don, you're absolutely right. Asking for help is the hardest thing ever for some men in particular, Black men in particular. It's become the easiest thing for me at this stage of my life, because even though there are a number of things I've been blessed to work my way through, as I approach new spaces in my world and in my life, I find myself needing to reach out and ask for this or this kind of assistance or that kind of help. It's become an easy thing for me when for most of my life it was just the opposite. So I'm getting a little late start on that, but certainly trying to introduce it to our folks is as much as we're allowed to do it. So.
Word. And I guess what's wild to me is hearing all of you talk about your relationships with mental health, knowing I struggle very much on a weekly basis, just addressing my own needs. And one of the things that I personally experienced, and I love my family with all of my heart, it's just very difficult to deal with other people telling me that I need the help and not addressing it within their own personal lives, or even acknowledging the fact that what we have done to each other as family members contributed to myself or others needing that mental health support. And that, just going through those processes and thinking you're alone, I think that's one of the hardest things that I deal with on a more consistent basis that I would care to. And I'm glad that you guys are pointing out the difficulty, and for one, knowing that you need help, but then the stigmas that come with asking for help, and being that one who's courageous enough to seek that help, whether it's one time or the next time. I know, especially when I think about just that cost fee. That's why I was nodding my head, Lindsay, when you're talking about $40 a session. I'm like, fuck that. Why? I would rather pay a certain amount of money to learn martial arts, because I see that, well, if I learn martial arts, I'm going to know how to whoop somebody's ass if I absolutely have to. That's why I would pay to learn martial arts. Come to mental health, I will, like myself, like I will be in denial about the fact that, well, I just need the regular skills to keep going and doing this work, having these conversations, or being there for my young men, or being there for my lady or my baby. Like, that shit is the value in paying for it. But just understanding the value of it that's a struggle for a lot of us. And I really wanted to highlight how significant that was. Danny, did we want to ask at least one question to our panelists that's more individually based, or how are you feeling?
Sure, yeah. We can pull out some of those questions.
And just real quick, what y'all are doing is just revolutionary in terms of bringing up topics that I don't really have words to describe how necessary they are, but we need to make it very frequent, within our own personal community. So I really appreciate that. And then I also want to highlight the fact that you guys are your individual experts. And the reason why we want to ask you guys some individual questions is because we know you got some insight on shit that nobody else does.
I think a question that we were talking about earlier, Shaun, that transitions pretty well for Hassan is, you talked about earlier Second Chance Center doing your kind of work in ways that no one else is doing it. And that's why you become like one of the eminent organizations in this state. Can you speak to that more, talk about the specifics of what works so well with the inmates that you had worked with, or the felons, or whoever is seeking your services? You're on mute right now.
Okay. First of all, let me please correct you. The phrase inmate is one that's really labeling a resident of one of these cages. We don't use that out here. Felon as well to us is it's describing a person by perhaps the worst thing they've ever done in their life. So we don't do that either. We tried to get the phrase criminal justice insiders going a few years back, but it didn't get a lot of momentum. And now they're saying formerly incarcerated persons. But let me just tell you what I think the difference is basically with us. I tried to explain it to a legislator a couple of years ago when he asked what the secret sauce was at Second Chance Center. Because when we passed legislation in 2014 that actually hijacked the percentage of DOC's budget and drove it into community. So we weren't talking about defund DOC, but we were trying to divest and reinvest in community dollars that we thought were going into a black hole. So we saw ourselves as revenue rescuers in that sense. But when they asked me what the secret sauce was, because we had had a couple of years to collect the kind of data that proved that our approach to this reentry work was more effective by far. We've had a recidivism rate under 10% for the last 6 years, which compared to the state, which is about 50%, and nationally it's about 40.
Brother
And what
Hassan,
excuse me?
real quick, I have an interjection. What is recidivism? Just for those in the audience who doesn't understand.
Okay, excuse me. That's someone returning to incarceration. The rate across the country is about 40%. And in Colorado, it's even higher. It's just under 50%. A lot of folks, 40% of the people that are sent back to prison in Colorado are sent back as a result of technical violations of parole and not any particular new crime that was committed. So if that answers the question. But I explained to the representatives that day that what I thought the difference was that the whole provider recipient power dynamic is something that we reject at Second Chance Center. We understand that we're the stewards of resources, but we never make our people feel like they got to have their hat in their hand when they come in looking for help. It's not about that. We choose instead to partner with our folks. So when we say to our people, for instance, the better you do, the better we're going to be able to do. This is not just blowing smoke. This is how we see it. The better our folks do, the better we're going to be able to do. The proof of that is, like I told you, this thing started in my car. And now we're at this place in our development. And the reason we've been able to get here is because we've been able to point to the success of our folks and let that establish our value in this work. So this population, when they say, when you speak generally about a population, you're probably in error. And I agree with that. That having been said, I'm real comfortable speaking about this population because this is my people. And I'm going to tell you that for the most part, the folks that we serve have felt apart from as opposed to being a part of most of their lives. And unfortunately, that was the case in some of the families that we've come from. So I think that's the part that's different about Second Chance Center. People feel very much a part of this entity, you know, and they are. So when we talk about things like being able to build a housing complex, we don't get an opportunity like that because, you know, I'm real slick out the side of my mouth. No, it's because we're able to point to the data that our folks are succeeding out here and the reasons why we think that's so. So when something like that goes up, when an apartment building goes up or some other, right now, and this is not to blow my horn, please, for those listening, I really don't intend it to sound like that. But I was appointed last year to the governor's executive clemency advisory board. The first time a previously incarcerated person ever sat on a clemency board. And I didn't get that offer. I didn't get that position because of anything particular about me. It's because so many thousands of folks that have come through our center and allowed us to be a part of their lives in some way have improved their condition, have not reoffended, have reintegrated with their families, have become a part of the tax-paying base, that kind of thing. And the recognition of that is what resulted in my being able to sit on that panel that decides whether or not someone gets a second chance coming out of the penitentiary and coming back to the world. And let me just tell you, if I could, and I'm sorry if I take too much time, you can cut me off if you need to, Shaun. But I had a friend. His name was Mustafa Abram Arrington. And this was the only person that I knew in the penitentiary who was absolutely innocent of any crime. Now, myself, I went to prison convicted of a crime that was someone else's, but I wasn't an innocent individual. I had footprints in the sand that were mine. This brother, I don't believe, busted a grape in a wine factory his entire life. And yet he got caught up in a situation where he was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in the penitentiary. And when I came home in 2006, all of these years that my life was developing and these things was happening, I was sick because there was this hole in me about this brother that I loved that was still inside those cages and that I couldn't do anything for. And we tried to get him out on clemency. And about 7 years ago, I made some efforts to try to get him out in that way, and nothing came of it. And so last year when we got this new governor and I wound up being invited to his residence, I had a chance to meet him. And it wasn't like I could just pull up and say, look, man, let me holler at you about my boy. It didn't feel like that was the proper setting. But there were a number of other occasions over the course of last year where I was in the same space with this man. And I never said a word to him about my friend. I never made an effort to get in his ear about it. And I started feeling as though I was betraying my friend. It just never felt, and I'm one that I don't push the thing that don't feel right for me. I mean, I did that for most of my life. I don't do that any longer. And it felt like that. Like, this is not the time, Hassan. Don't, you know. But like I said, I started feeling like I was betraying my man. And then in October, I got a call from the governor's office asking me to sit on this executive panel, clemency panel. And I said, does he know who he's asking? And the woman laughed and she said, yes, Mr. Latif, he knows. So I said, okay, I'll definitely take that seat because I'm thinking about my guy. And I'm gonna tell you, the first package of clemency applications that came to me, when I opened it up, the first name on the freaking list was my guy. I'm saying that to say that some things are ordained, some things are beyond us, and some things happen as a result, sometimes in spite of ourselves. And this was an instance. He was the first case that came up. And I had the rest of the panel pretty much attacking me about my being conflicted. And my vibe was the governor knew who he was sitting here. I'm gonna know people. This man I know personally. And I just wanted to say that he was the first one that got clemency as a result of my being involved in that process. He's now home. He works at Second Chance Center. He's a brilliant man. He was brilliant inside. In 31 years, I never heard him whine about his condition, and I always admired that about him. And so I'm just saying that to say a lot of times we do the best we can, and we wind up being blessed with opportunities that are beyond our own capability and our own reach. And I'm convinced of that by my own life.
I love that, Brother Hassan. And there's a few reasons why mass incarceration at large feels very personal. I'll do a brief dialogue about my brother. My mom had me at 14. She had my brother at 15. And my brother was adopted due to the fact that we just didn't have enough resources and support within our family at the time to keep him. And he's been dealing with the prison industrial complex out in South Dakota for a long time. And I'm always wondering, how do we get people off of parole? How do we get into the dialogue of clemency? How do we even have a cultural understanding that some people aren't built for the place or the state that they have to occupy? You know, those are some of the things. I'm blessed to be able to hear how you've been able to make the most out of your situation and how Mustafa did with him. Because there's some people who just have an innate ability to deal with situations. And then there's some of us like myself who I'm like, I'm gonna get pissed the hell off and I'm gonna start a petition, or at least let people know about a petition, because that's the only thing that I know how to do. I'll probably be more reactionary. So I really appreciate and admire your view. And pardon my daughter screaming in the background.
Hey, brother, you don't have to apologize for it. You're there for her. And that in itself, that in itself says a lot. You know, I just want to throw out there to the audience. I don't know how many folks might be listening or who might be struggling to get from point A to point B in whatever movement they're a part of. But part of what we try to promote for our folks is how different life can be if we commit to it in different ways. You know, just, you know, I remember there's a building here in Lindsay knows, 940 Broadway. It's the headquarters for the Division of Adult Parole. And when I first was in my car and I tried to get in there because I heard there was a community reentry meeting going on, and someone called me and told me about it and told me what room it was in this building. I wasn't invited, of course, but I went anyway. And I played it off like I was just somebody there to see my parole officer like the rest of the folks. I went through the pat first. I went through my property being searched. I went through the metal detector. But instead of going right, I went left. And I went to this room where all these people were meeting. When I went there, it was not a face of color in the room. And I said, I understand this is a community reentry meeting. And they said, yes, it is. I said, well, I don't see any representatives from the community. So if it's all right, I'm just going to stay. And that was my introduction to that building. And I say that because that same building is where the clemency board meets. And now when I go to that building, I have a reserved parking place there. When I say to my folks that things can be different if we grind hard, if we focus, if we treat ourselves well, if we're honest about our approach to our own lives and our own decision making, that we can force our way into spaces where we're not really welcome. We can do that. And this is what I'm seeing all over the country right now, that my young brothers and sisters are saying, fuck all that waiting. Nobody has a decade to wait for something to change right now. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm hearing from them, whether they're saying it or not. It's like, yeah, the brother Don said, thank the old heads, but we're thanking y'all because you're reemphasizing that these are issues that have been going on for centuries and needs to stop. And now we just had the passing of a warrior last week, John Lewis, who when I was coming up and I was watching them march, to me, I wasn't in favor of that kind of thing. I was a running gun at that time. I was more about Malcolm's approach to things. It took me some time to recognize the wisdom and the courage of the folks that approach these issues, like John Lewis and others who got beat down and bloodied and continued to do the kind of work that they were doing. This man died at 80 years old and probably asking himself, what happened? What happened? You know, and probably feeling quite saddened and disheartened that here we are still dealing with the same issues. So please, y'all, in my lifetime, go ahead and finish this job up for us, for crying out loud.
I just want to jump in about demanding space. So we did this thing over in the Aurora community at the, can you guys hear me? I'm having some technical difficulties. Let me fix this. I'll come back.
No, I can hear you well, Lindsay.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we decided that we were going to start going to city council meetings. And city council meetings are every other Monday. And it takes a lot of time because sometimes they go all the way till 2:00 in the morning until all the public invited to be heard has been done. And we're listening to all the things that get passed in city council because Aurora doesn't govern the same way as Denver does. In Denver, the mayor has a whole lot of the power, but in Aurora, city council has more power than the mayor. And the city council votes on things and then it's passed to the city manager and the assistant city manager, and then that's how things get done. And we're looking at this stuff and we're seeing, oh, you're fixing stop signs over here, but you're not fixing stop signs over there where the black kids are getting hit by cars. You know, just all of these local issues and demanding space. So Elijah McClain gets killed and murdered by Aurora police, and we start talking in the public invited to be heard, like, why is this not a citywide issue? Why are, chokeholds, and why is the use of ketamine not illegal in the city of Aurora? And who gave anybody the right to give these paramedics to inject a chemical into a living, breathing human being without knowing any medical history? And then they use this excuse about excited delirium. That's why. Elijah had never been diagnosed with anything. Elijah has never been known to be on the spectrum. Elijah was just different. And I know that we have swag as a culture. We operate and we move and we walk different, we talk different, and everybody is not the same. And so watching somebody who was just living in his world where he was accepted and functioning and dealing with the people and interacting with the people get, smothered, get corduroy chokeholds, um, to have to be forced to vomit on himself and then threaten to be sick with dogs. This needed to be a issue addressed at city council. These officers needed to be fired and in prison. Not only that, they need to be charged. Yeah, they can have their day in court or whatnot, but they need to at least be charged and be serving time in jail while they're being charged, not out suing for their jobs back. Rosenblatt is suing for his job back, and that it makes you demand space. And people are like, well, why are you still protesting? Why are these protests lasting so long? We're at what, day 45 or something ish, of protests all across the country. But we've been protesting since August for Elijah. And we shut down city council meetings, and they got mad and they ran to their little closed room and said, we're going to take away public to invited to be heard, which we don't want to happen. So we continued with our meeting without them and then participated in theirs. We had to demand space, and now they're listening. Elijah McClain is a big issue in Aurora. Just being reactionary. Somebody said reactionary. Well, when we're in this protest process, there has been something that changed because we're planning things ahead of time. We're a step ahead of time. We occupied the APD station a couple of weeks ago, and they completely lost their minds. But the point was is that we're watching you, and when you think we're turning left, we're turning right, and we're going to come and then we're going to demand this space, and we're going to demand to be heard. And fast forward to today, Mari Newman and Kilmore Lane and Newman filed a lawsuit about the violin vigil that was disrupted by the police. There was, let me set that frame of mind. Like there had been protests earlier in the day, and you still have the people over in the grass area, chanting and yelling for justice and doing stuff. But you also on this side have a group of young violinists and others that have flown in from across the country that are participating from Denver School of the Arts. Just everybody from community bringing their string instruments and they're starting to play, and it's beautiful. And all of a sudden, you see the Gestapo marching in, and they're
S-
marching. What?
Sister Lindsay, excuse me, could you just explain to the audience the significance of the violins?
Elijah was a violinist, and he taught himself. He was a self-taught musician. And he also taught, he played his violin for homeless kittens. That's what kind of soul we lost. On his times off and his breaks, he would play the violin for homeless kittens in the shelter, and spend his time. And he was also a healer. He was a massage therapist, and um, he worked at Massage Envy. And the Massage Envy folks that know him, am I still there? Hello? Are you guys there?
Yes, you are.
Okay,
Thank
yeah, my computer froze. The folks at Massage Envy would talk about how sweet his spirit was as he was working out people's kinks and stuff. So, the significance of the violin is that all these violinists wanted to pay tribute to a musician because music brings people together. And there was people of all different kinds of ethnicities gathered together because music appeals to your soul and to your heart. It doesn't matter what kind of music it is, but it's going to bring everybody together. So we had all of these people gathered for this violin vigil, and they're starting to play, and all of a sudden you see the troops marching out, and they're surrounding us. And I ran across the stage and I was telling the violinist to keep playing, and Candace was telling the violinist to keep playing. And you hear us both in the background saying, protect the violinist, use your bodies, put your bodies between our youth, put your bodies in front of the artist. And the Aurora police are pepper spraying us, and shooting canisters of some kind of chemical agent. We don't know what it is because nobody will admit to what it is. Um, so it brings you to this lawsuit. And sometimes it is a brave step to be the name on a lawsuit, to be, Mentor et al. Versus Aurora. That's scary crap because that's going to bring hate mail. That's going to bring, just uncooperation with the city and county of Aurora, especially that I'm trying to work within. They can't be retaliatory because that would be just wrong. But when I am asking for certain things to be done for family or permissions, they can kind of push back because they're not happy that I'm the name on this lawsuit. Fast forward to this ketamine. We're coming for that ketamine. The time is now to get rid of ketamine in our paramedics. It is absolutely appalling that one doctor can authorize all of these people to use ketamine and they've never been trained in it. They don't know how to recognize other people's, allergies. They don't know anything about people's asthmatic situations or mental health situations at that, or what chemicals are going to be interacting with it. It should not be allowed. It's a horse tranquilizer and a date rape drug. And it needs to be monitored when given, when it's used for medical sedation purposes. You have to be monitored. So it doesn't surprise me that, Elijah had heart attacks and respiratory duress, like because that's what ketamine does. So this bill that we're going to be working on is, pushing for outlawing, ketamine. It's just crazy. There's so much to do. This weekend, we're still bringing it the Frontline Party for Revolutionary Action. We founded that in the height of, this. In the heat of this, we had to form a group and figure out what our ideals were. So that way we weren't being reactionary. We were planning and making sure that we have things in place. We're coming with the legislation. We're fighting, to get bills passed. We're fighting for places, creating the citizen oversight board that I'm sitting on. It didn't exist, in August. It didn't exist. And so we had to demand that it existed. We had to create this to create a community police task force that doesn't exist yet, but we're creating that because we have to leave a mark on this world and we have to leave this world a better place than we found it. I always think about how my mom centers in what she did, and she's like, I did a lot in my day, and she's a powerful woman, and I admire her greatly, and I listen to her because she's my elder, and all my elders in my family. But the fact that I'm out here fighting in the streets for the things that she was fighting for in her youth, I'm not leaving that for our youth. If I have anything to do it, and if I have every breath in my body, to go ahead and leave on this earth, fighting to make it a better place for our children, that's what we have to do.
I mean,
And real quick, because I do want to circle back to Don at some point.
Yeah, where's my brother?
I know, man. It's crazy because Don, he's in a whole nother time zone. So I just gotta shout him out because he's probably bugging right now. It's probably what 10:36 over there.
Yeah,
long day.
it's 9:30. It's not. I'm not gonna lie, y'all. I'm extra tired over here.
Thanks for hanging with us, brother. And y'all gonna lose me in a minute. I'm down to my last 2% on this phone. I apologize. I should have been better prepared. Go ahead, my brother.
So Lindsay, before I do transition, I just want to acknowledge the fact that the work that you're doing with Elijah McClain is extremely important, and I'm really thankful that I was able to talk to you before this Zoom because I didn't understand ketamine, like I really didn't. And for anybody who is just now learning about this on the Facebook Live, it's okay. It's okay to be like, what the fuck did they put a horse or a date? What? Like, it's okay to feel that and acknowledge that because that's where
it's crazy.
it is. It's why are we doing that? And the more that we start to put out those questions, why, and then get to what Brother Hassan and what Lindsay were talking about in terms of occupy the space, demand, that's how we can do this collectively. So to transition to Don, I'm just curious on your thoughts because you highlighted how we need to protect our young people and our women in particular with this refuse to return movement. So how do you feel we can occupy space as it relates to our young people's safety as it relates to returning to school? Because right now there's a lot of uncertainty and I don't think anybody has a healthy answer at this point. We're all learning together, but how do you think that we could potentially occupy space and provide some safety for our youth and women and educate
Um,
for that matter?
I gotcha. So I think with consideration of reopening campuses, it's one of those things where demanding space is actually pretty simple. Um, the name of the movement is refuse to return. You just don't go back. You don't send your children back. You refuse to re-engage with this system. Um, there are just refuse to return. There are chapters in just about every state, just about every metro. Um, and within those chapters are teachers, retired teachers, parents, truancy officers, all these people who are sharing resources for people to be able to learn online, have distance learning, think outside the box for ways to address these issues that don't involve sending children into school buildings that are not designed to keep them safe from each other. It's impossible in any classroom in this country to have an average standard size class and keep students 6 feet apart. Now, when you have desks in a class, now when you have cubbies in lower classes, a teacher desk, none of that. You might be able to get 7 to 10 students on average, at least in Mississippi, on average, that's leaving about 15 students outside the class. You can't do it. How are you going to put children on a school bus and keep them socially distanced? It's not possible. There are people who have been giving false options and false choices in the illusion of safety by, hey, we'll do hybrid education. We'll do some days on campus, some days off. And these things aren't possible. Even when you think of having lower income children or children who only get meals from school, right? A significant portion of the population who that breakfast at school, that lunch at school, those are the 2 meals that they're eating during the day. It is safer and more cost efficient to have those meals delivered via 15 passenger van to students in whatever district. Um, there are concerns about socialization, physical activity. These are valid concerns. You can schedule a play date at the park. You can schedule time at the football field at the school where you're not bunched together in a classroom for 8 hours. Just breathing in recycled air and bacteria, and kids swapping masks because somebody's got their favorite cartoon character on one, or whatever small children are gonna do. Like it's insane. We have to, when we're talking about taking up space, we have to recognize that that's not just physical space. It's intellectual space. It's energy. It is systemic space, and that's what we can do with this reopening of campuses. You can take up space by staying home. You could take up space by finding out, asking your child who else in their class is good at math or good at English that can help little Johnny next door. You can take up space by banding together with the retired teachers from your church to help out with some kids that need extra help. We have all the power working together and none of the power. We just give it away by following a demand that's not meant for us. Um, yeah, I don't know. That probably sounded real scatterbrained because sleep is calling me. But uh, to that point, yeah, make sure, guys, refuse to return on Facebook, on Instagram. Follow, find out what people in your area are doing. Um, the local chapters are usually something like Denver for a safe return to campus. I run Mississippi for a safe return to campus. And if there's not one in your area, reach out to the Refuse to Return main page and ask how you can start a page. It's real simple. It's important that we all band together and stay unified during this time, because this is an issue that impacts literally everybody.
That's very true.
People talk about this epidemic in movements, and I just want to point out something that when we're at our protests and marches, like you'll see when we start feeding the kids, we're feeding the kids compound of compassion is feeding homeless kids and giving them opportunities to shower. We're doing food and we're giving them clothing. But we do it when we have masks on and there's hand washing stations and there's sanitary things out there because the work still has to get done during COVID. When we're at our marches, there's hand sanitizers and masks. If you don't have a mask, somebody's probably about to hand you one. You better take that because you don't want no problems. Listen, I have a vulnerable person I have to come home to and stay in my room and make sure I wash and do all that stuff, you know. So, you know, we're out here doing the stuff and we're not spreading corona in our movement, you know. And so we're taking points to be safe. So I say that to say still come out and see what we're doing, but do it properly. And if you are a person who cannot come out because you're at risk, you know, amplify online. You know, everybody talks about, oh, I didn't know how to get involved. What can I do when I'm at home? What can I do? Well, you can hit this and share this on your page, and share it and have these conversations with your loved ones. The white folks watching, you know, you can have these uncomfortable conversations with your people. You know, it's time to call your people in. And it's not my job to call them in. You know, I've called in some, but it's your turn to call them in. You know, you need to be the one having these uncomfortable conversations with your folks. When you hear that racist joke, you know, that's a step. That's doing something. That's combating racism where you're at. Because the whole thing about this movement is we have to meet everybody where they're at. Everybody. And I also say that to say that, you know, if you can contribute dollars, you know, find the organizations in your community that need the help. You know, if like we need towels and soap for a Saturday, you know, find out who's collecting the towels and the soap. Shay Shaw, for the folks in Aurora, her name is Shay. Find her, she needs them towels and them soaps. But yeah, so you know, you find the people in the community that are doing the things, and if you can only drop off water, or if you can only drop off, you know, a 6 pack of bars of soap or some, you know, individual bottles for these kids. You know, you can do those things. And if you can't show up to a protest, watch it, stream it, watch it, because you are the ones who are watching. Your eyes are watching. And when we say the world is watching, we're talking about you. You guys are our protection. It's witnessing. You saw firsthand that I wasn't doing anything and my hands are up and officer so and so sprays me in the face with pepper spray and abuses his power or whatnot. You're our witnesses. And so you are doing something. So please don't ever get discouraged at not being able to know what path. Somebody's going to say something that lights a fire under you and you're going to find out everything about it and you'll be called. And when that calling comes, answer it because, you know, courage, you know, we all have it. You just have to find it. So
Lindsay,
take some of ours.
hey Lindsay, real quick, because you kind of skip through a very personal and strong story. Can you talk a little bit more about that incident that you experienced on the front lines, just for
Oh,
viewers and everybody on the panel? Like, I don't think everybody is very familiar with what you were referring to.
okay. Well, my face and my jaw are they're coming down or whatever. We'll say the end of May, the first week that George Floyd was, you know, going on. I had spoke. I had led a rally cry. I was, you know, in downtown Denver, you know, supporting the George Floyd protest while crying Elijah's name, which I got a lot of flack for because they were saying, "Why are you talking about Elijah and building off the back of another dead man?" And that's not what I was doing. I was just trying to make sure that while George Floyd's name was being heard, Elijah's name was being heard too, because Elijah matters also, you know. And this fight has become so many names, so it doesn't matter if we slide somebody else in. But I was leaving, and me and my significant other, Chris, were walking, and we were walking to the car, and something hit, and I don't know if it was a pepper ball or what kind of projectile it was, but my jaw swelled up like this, and I ran to the car or whatever, and as the day progressed, my face just got bigger and bigger. Come to find out that I had a contusion from whatever it was, a jaw contusion, which takes 6 weeks to heal. But they fractured a tooth. I had to get it pulled, and had to get a bone graft because when it was swelling and nobody knew what was going on, the ducts got swollen. So, anyways, I say that to say that that was a direct, you know, police violence situation that I encountered. That was in Denver. But what I'm talking about the pepper spray, I wasn't exactly pepper sprayed, but I was in close proximity to young black females and young white children getting pepper sprayed with their hands up at the violin vigil. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about getting sprayed and having their rights violated. It's traumatic. You don't even understand what's going on when it's happening. It's like unbelievable that these people in these uniforms, being that I was one of those people in the uniforms in my past, and that's how I got my TBI. I thought I was going to fix this stuff from the inside and went into law enforcement, and they didn't want a black female there, so they made sure to damage me so I could not return. But I learned that system, and I've been on the inside of that. I know what's right and I know what's wrong. And so my voice in the community is coming from a place of being on both sides. I know how law enforcement is supposed to work. I went through the FLETC, the federal law enforcement training to get there, to be post certified. I've been through all that and I know this is not right. And in my soul, I just keep fighting. I bounce everywhere because it's so important. But I just have to keep fighting this system, because when people abuse their power and they abuse this command authority that they have, it takes away from everyone. When my rights get taken away, your rights get taken away. When these people in Portland's rights are getting taken away, this is a whole setup for all of us. We have to protect, because if you don't come for Bobby and you don't come for Susan, and Bobby and Susan are gone, and then they come for you, and nobody, who's going to be left to come for you? You have to make sure that you're fighting for everybody, because when something happens to you, you want to make sure your community is there to come for you.
Thank you so much for that, Lindsay. And once again, I do hope healing is going as good as it can be. And what's really resonating, this might be a little controversial, but I see a lot of Black women leading movement, and I really want to challenge myself as a Black man, and I want all the viewers, all the Black men in particular, like we gotta figure out a way to revisit our protective nature, because it's very natural for, like if something's going on with my daughter, it's like, huh? You know what I'm saying? So in order to protect our community, we have to participate, and we have to participate in many different ways. It's not one way that is going to solve everything, but I really want to challenge us as Black men to figure out what and how we are going to protect our women, because I really do get tired of hearing stories such as Lindsay's. As courageous as it is, I get tired of hearing another woman is getting brutalized, whether it's by police or by another man. So that's a personal thing that I had to interject, or felt compelled to at least. But given that we're in our last few minutes, I want to begin to close out this space. And the way we're going to do that is through another brief meditation. And I know Hassan is driving, so he can participate as possible. But for those of us who are on the panel, those of us who are at home viewing, if you could put your back firm against whatever you're sitting on or sitting behind, and just take note of your body. Because I know when we first started this, we didn't really understand what exactly we were going to get into. And as Brother Hassan had pointed out, after we did our first meditation, we just jumped from being grounded to hell, because this is some tough shit. And that's why I do a grounding mechanism before and after. So just take some time, sit with yourself. And if you feel comfortable or compelled to do so, close your eyes. Breathe at your own pace. I can tell everybody, I feel a little bit of tension in the back of my shoulder right now. Like I feel that personally. I think that's when I hear Black women have just gotten hit. Like maybe that's where my shit is. Just saying. But I want to heal that. So we're going to take a deep breath through the nose. Hold it in our stomach. And release through the mouth. Another deep breath through the nose. Hold it in your rib cage. Notice your heart. And breathe out through the mouth. Let your shoulders sink as well. And then on a count of 3, we're going to do a very deep breath, as deep as we can go. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in through the nose. Hold it in the throat. And release and let your shoulders relax. And when you feel compelled to, open your eyes. I'm really just trying to get Don to actually go to sleep.
Almost there.
Hey, brother. Thanks for hanging with us, brother.
All good. Anytime, literally anytime.
Please look for me to reach out, brother. I really want to connect with you offline, and it'd be an honor if you afford me some of your time.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. Anytime. We can definitely. I think we got a lot to talk about, a lot of moves to make. Honestly, everybody here. I'd love to speak with more.
Right, and Lindsay, you one of my heroines here in Colorado, so we gotta make some time as well.
Yes, I'll bring you some coffee or something.
Thank you, sis.
Yeah.
Actually, to that point, Lindsay, I have a friend of my wife's, actually, a friend of mine as well. She recently got commissioned to paint a mural for Elijah and for Black Lives Matter in the Arts District in Denver. So we're supposed to be coming out there to get some footage of that for Rebel Media. So I mean, yeah, any way that we can talk and collab and coordinate on,
I sent you a friend request, so.
We go.
All right.
Thank you guys for your time. Thank you for allowing me to get some stuff off my chest today.
Oh, of course.
Thank you for sharing, sis.
Thank you for sharing. And my last request is that if you guys have any plugs in terms of how we can support you, you can shout those out now. And then following this, we would love for you to email me or text me if you have my number. And me and Danny collectively will post information about whatever you got going on, whether it's your podcast, Don, or Brother Hassan, it's information regarding Second Chance Center, whatever it is. Feel free to shout yourself out one last time, and then we'll post after this as well.
Heard. I'll go first because that means I will go to sleep soon. So first, I guess I want to shout the podcast. My wife and I host a podcast called Baked Beans and Rice. We talk about basically the global perspective of Blackness. My wife's Afro-Panamanian, first generation. I'm a country fried Southern boy from Mississippi. We just talk about kind of our different navigation of Blackness and have different guests on to talk about the same. So again, that podcast is Baked Beans and Rice. It's on all major podcasting platforms. Also, bakedbeansandrice.com. And then in addition to that, I want to highlight Rebel Media Group, which was born from our podcast. It's a network of Black creatives, entrepreneurs, and activists, all collaborating and cross-promoting with each other. It's where a lot of the refuse to return work that I've been doing in rallies and organizations that we've been doing. We're broadcasting from the Rebel Media Group social media pages, and also the Rebel Media Group website, which is simply rebelmedia.group. So be sure to check that out and follow us. And then if you want to donate, I'm Teasyman on Cash App because this shit ain't free. So
All right. Thanks for all you doing, my brother.
yeah, appreciate y'all.
Just real quick, I'll just run that email again, please. Please feel free to share any of my information, Shaun, including my cell phone number, brother. They got it on the wall of the bathroom at the Greyhound station. So, you know, you can distribute it wide. That please go to www.scccolorado.org and you find out what we're doing out here in Colorado with Second Chance Center. And I look to hear from anyone who might be interested in getting involved, supporting us, or letting us know how we can support you.
I was trying to post the links to the events on the page, but it won't let me. So let me just say that on Saturday from 7 to 9, there's going to be a protest Frontline Party for Revolutionary Action at the Municipal Center in Aurora. We have some plans. We're still demanding that the officers that killed Elijah McClain, that 2 of them get fired, and all 3 of those that participated, plus the 2 paramedics, get charges. So we will have demonstrations until the end of time on that. But also on that same day, we are feeding homeless youth. It's an all-out event. Everybody is going to be participating. And so I'm trying to get that information because it's at the MLK library. Okay, so yeah, the Aurora Municipal Center is 15002 East Alameda Parkway, Saturday 7:25, 5 to 8 p.m. And then also the caravan from Colorado to 1,000 miles to Breonna Taylor is leaving tonight and tomorrow to go and show our solidarity in Louisville for the protesters that got arrested and for Breonna Taylor. So that's happening tonight.
My bad, Lindsay. I don't want to cut you off. So I'm really curious about this caravan. When are they supposed to be in Louisville?
They are going to be in Louisville tomorrow at noon speaking. They were invited to a Breonna Taylor rally. And so it's what the rally, the hashtag is 1,000 miles for Breonna.
Mm-hmm.
And the actual call to action. So it's the peaceful protest march in Louisville at 2 p.m. on Friday, 7/24, Louisville Metro Hall, 527 West Jefferson Street, Louisville, Kentucky, 40202. And there's a Facebook event as well.
I just found it. One of the girls, one of the people that got arrested up there is a girl from my hometown, who also got fired from her job down here in Mississippi for making a comment about Black Lives Matter. So like, yeah, my wife probably gonna kill me. We might end up back on the highway tomorrow.
And then the feeding the youth. Hold on, I'm just trying to find that. I know that I'm long-winded. I'm just trying to find that flyer on the right person. Shaw. And that's Shay, S-H-A, Shaw, S-H-A-W, with Compound of Compassion, and Candace Bailey, Compact of Compassion. And I meet tomorrow packing backpacks for the kids. So I'm doing that as well. But their event is off of Martin Luther King at the library here in Aurora. And I can't find the time. But I'll find it and post it in the link. So lots going on, y'all. It's a constant movement. I hate when people say it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. I coach sprinters, and these kids bound and they lunge and they build up muscle and they build up endurance, and then they lift in the weight room, sometimes before school and after school, to get it all done. And then they spend time on the track. So it absolutely is a sprint because it's powerful. It's
Mhm.
powerful.
Say that.
We got to be sprinting a lot. We got to build that endurance.
Facts. So once again, I really appreciate Brother Don. I really appreciate Sister Lindsay, Brother Hassan, as well as Brother Danny. And it's just been an honor, man. Like I think the more that I've seen these dialogues play out, the more encouraged I feel to just know what work is going on. Because it's one thing if we're doing something, it's another thing if we connect with somebody else who's doing a whole nother set of eight whatever. I think
Yeah.
that's always inspiring. So I really appreciate and admire you guys making time for this. And once again, to everybody in the audience, I'm Shaun Don the Truth, artist based out of Denver, Colorado, born by the lake, Oakland, California. And I just love doing this shit, man. Danny, did you have anything else?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to our guests. You guys are truly leaders. I feel incredibly inspired. For whoever's watching, share this video, download it for yourself, share it from Soul Stories. These are important conversations, important voices to be heard, as Shaun said. This kind of connection, this is what continues to make change. And I just feel super grateful to work with you, Shaun, and you have just led an incredible fucking initiative. This has been super beautiful to witness and to see how talented and powerful you are. So I appreciate it.
Likewise.
Good night to the 8 of you who are still watching. We had like 25 at one point. Now we're down to 8, so we better go.
No.
Y'all.
That's good. Yeah, I appreciate y'all. This was dope. Literally anytime. Y'all want to talk about anything ever again, just holler at your boy. I'm with it.
We got you. Shoot, we got to hop on your podcast next, and then we got.
Yeah, for sure. I'll send you the Calendly link. Just pick a date. We can do it.
I got you. All right, y'all, man. Get some rest. You
Take
keep
it
talking.
easy.
Rest.